College football week 6 is here. I'm Shannon Sommerville with your top 5 college football player prop bets that are available on Underdog Fantasy, PrizePicks, Sleeper, and CHALKBOARD. If you don't have those apps, go ahead and download them. Use the promo code LineStar when you do, and you'll get up to $100 of your first deposit match. And I actually got an email this morning from an Underdog Fantasy representative who said for a limited time they are doing $500 deposit matches. So just make sure to use that promo code LineStar when you download those apps. Great way to place those bets, because if you're in a state like I am in California where sports betting is not yet legal, this falls into the daily fantasy gaming jurisdiction. So you are still able to play apps like Underdog Fantasy, PrizePicks, Sleeper, and CHALKBOARD. So make sure to check out that deal. Also, do me a huge favor. Like this video if you're enjoying our content. Subscribe to our channel and comment below. A comment will also enter you into our prop bets contest. If we hit 4 of 5 props, one randomly selected commenter will win $50. So you got to be in it to win it. And it also helps out the good old algorithm and helps us get some content out there. If you haven't signed up for notifications, it might be worth doing, because a lot of times the lines change. We want you guys to be able to hop on our bets when we come out with these videos. Make sure to check that out. Now, last week, I have to apologize to you guys. I was out. I had COVID, but I'm back. I'm healthy, ready to attack the prop market this week. We've got a great slate of games. One game that I'm super excited for: Kentucky, Georgia. My Georgia Bulldogs are playing this weekend, and I am absolutely terrified. The Georgia Bulldogs are on upset alert in this one. I know the spread is like 14.5 in favor of the dogs in this one, but I'm nervous about this game. I think I would not be surprised at all if Kentucky pulls off the upset in this one, and I do have a prop bet from that game. That'll be coming up in just a second. But one of my favorite storylines from this week is the NCAA granting eligibility to UNC wide receiver Teez Walker. And that's exactly where I'm going for my first prop bet. I don't often throw the term lock out there, but in this case, I think this might be a lock. I got Teez Walker over 58.5 receiving yards. Now, if you're not familiar with the story, what happened was Teez Walker was declared a 2-time transfer. So he was declared ineligible to start the season. However, when you look back, he was at North Carolina Central, and that was back in 2020. They didn't even have a football team because of COVID. So he transfers to Kent State. He plays there. So technically, he didn't even play football at his first school. So that's why they were asking the NCAA to overrule this, which they did this week. And he is, in fact, eligible to play now for the UNC Tar Heels in their game against Syracuse. And this is a super talented wide receiver who will immediately step into the wide receiver 1 role on the Tar Heels with Drake May at quarterback. I love this spot for him. And against a Syracuse team that has struggled to defend against opposing wide receivers. Teez Walker was a guy who averaged 77 receiving yards per game last year. He had 106 against the 2-time defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs. Then he had 2 more 100-yard receiving games, and he was averaging 15.9 yards per catch through 12 games. Meanwhile, Syracuse has allowed an opposing receiver 100 yards in each of the last 3 games. Yeah, give me Teez Walker over 58.5 receiving yards. This is probably the lowest it's ever going to be. Next up, to the Red River rivalry, Oklahoma taking on Texas. And in this game, we're looking at Oklahoma's quarterback, Dillon Gabriel, over 266.5 passing yards. Now, Gabriel is the leader in passing yards in the Big 12. He missed last year's Red River rivalry showdown because he was out with a concussion in this one. I think he's going to be looking for a little revenge in this one. Last year, Texas took it to the Sooners, and Gabriel, I think, is going to be looking for a little payback this time around. LineStar's projection for Gabriel is 303 passing yards, so a significant edge in terms of our projection. Gabriel's also racked up over 300 yards in all but one game this season. This high game total at 60.5 indicates the odds makers are expecting a shootout in this one, and they're going up against Texas. Yes, they haven't allowed an opposing quarterback over 255 passing yards. However, they haven't really faced many high-caliber quarterbacks. They've faced a lot of backup quarterbacks, and then Jalen Milroe for Alabama. I like Gabriel's spot here to clear that 266.5. Now, as to whether Oklahoma will win, not quite sure if they're going to pull off the upset, but I do think Gabriel will get there on the passing yards. To the SEC, two undefeated teams going head-to-head. The Kentucky Wildcats taking on the Georgia Bulldogs in Sanford Stadium. And in this one, as a Georgia Bulldogs fan, I am terrified in this one. And this is not the same defense that won back-to-back national championships. A lot of those guys are now in the NFL, and this is an entirely new defense that really has struggled to find its identity so far this season. And they've allowed a lot of opposing quarterbacks to put up numbers against them, which is exactly why I'm taking Kentucky Wildcats quarterback Devin Leary over 156.5 passing yards in this one. Leary has actually hit this in 4 of 5 games this season. He's averaging 226 passing yards per game, and he hasn't even really had to throw that much because their running back Ray Davis has been unbelievable. He put up 280 rushing yards versus Florida last week. Yeah, they're going to have to throw the ball this week against Georgia in this one, who has a pretty good rush defense. UGA is giving up an average of 173 passing yards per game, so the law of averages in this one alone is telling me to take the over on Devin Leary's passing yards prop. Again, this is not the same Georgia Bulldogs defense that was so dominant in years past. They've struggled a little bit, and they have showed chinks in the armor. Watch out for the Wildcats this weekend. The Bulldogs are very much on upset alert. Even if the Wildcats don't pull off the upset in this one, I think Devin Leary is still going to clear that number at 156.5. Just too low for me. I've seen too much Georgia Bulldogs defense over the past few weeks to be able to confidently say that they will stop Devin Leary and that Wildcats offense. Elsewhere in the SEC, if this were any other player, and this line would be absolutely bonkers. 108.5 receiving yards, and I'm taking the over in this one. I've got to be talking about Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden, and in fact, I am. I'm taking the over here, and that is because Luther Burden leads the SEC in receiving yards and is now going up against an LSU team that has allowed 5 opposing wide receivers to rack up over 100 receiving yards. I love Burden's spot here, even though that line is extremely high. That's like a Justin Jefferson receiving yards line. When you look at Burden's numbers, you know exactly why that line is at 108.5. He's hit this in 4 of the last 5 games and is averaging 129 receiving yards per game. The game total right now at 65 indicates this is going to be a high-scoring affair. And in fact, on the other side of things, you got a pretty good wide receiver in Malik Neighbors, who's second in receiving yards in the SEC. These are the 2 top wide receivers in college football right now going head-to-head. This is going to be a shootout, and I expect both wide receivers to hit their over, but the one I'm endorsing for this week is going to be Burden over 108.5 receiving yards. And lastly, to the Pac-12, where 13th ranked Washington State is taking on UCLA. And in this game, we're looking at UCLA running back Carson Steele over 72.5 rushing yards. It's around minus 115 in the sports books. And LineStar's projection for Steele's rushing yards is at 87. So we've got a pretty significant margin and edge for ourselves here. Steele has gone over this in 3 of 4 games. He was only under against 11th ranked Utah last week. He had just 29, but I expect them to have a lot more rushing yards this time around. The game total in this game indicates a lot of offense, 60.5. That's really high. And this is a guy who averaged 129 rush yards per game last year, going up against a Washington State defense. They're okay. They rank 15th in terms of rush defense. Ultimately, I think the game plan for UCLA in this one is going to be to run the ball a little bit more, slow things down, and keep the ball out of the hands of Cougars quarterback Cameron Ward, who's a dark horse contender for the Heisman in this one. I think all of that lends itself to the over on rushing yards for Carson Steele. He's very agile, great balance and vision, and he owns a pet alligator. Yes, that is a true story. His alligator's name is Crocky J. It lives back home in his hometown of Greenwood, Indiana. You can Google it for yourself. That is the true facts and the facts that I bring here on my props show. So those are your 5 best player prop bets for college football week 6. Good luck in all of your prop betting action. Again, all of the information I provided, except for maybe the alligator thing, is available on the LineStar app. So check that out at linestarapp.com. The tool I'm using is called the Props AI tool. It's awesome to help you find the best value in the prop market. So make sure to check that out. Also, again, if you haven't already, do me a huge favor, like this video, subscribe to our channel, comment below. Again, a comment enters you into the prop bets contest. If I hit 4 of 5, we'll give out $50, and I'll announce that next week on the show. Good luck, everybody. Enjoy the games. We'll see you next week.